SITREP World Briefing for July 16, 2026. The United States and Iran traded direct military blows on July 16, with Washington launching a fresh wave of strikes inside Iran and Tehran responding with attacks on U.S. military sites in Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan. Explosions were reported across Iran overnight, and the United States also resumed daytime operations against Iranian targets as tensions centered on the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway critical to global oil shipments. Iran said it had targeted U.S. military positions in Jordan, Kuwait, and Bahrain in retaliation, and neighboring Gulf states began reporting attacks shortly before or as the latest U.S. strikes unfolded. Bahrain is home to the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet, while Kuwait and Jordan have long served as key hubs for U.S. military logistics, air operations, and regional deterrence. Washington's latest campaign included renewed strikes on Iranian military assets, with U.S. Central Command saying it had resumed daylight attacks and targeted coastal defenses and missile sites. Iranian state media accounts said U.S. strikes had also reached areas around Tehran for the first time in the most recent wave. The immediate stakes now extend from military escalation to energy security, because any sustained disruption around the Strait of Hormuz could affect tanker traffic, insurance costs, and oil flows far beyond the Middle East. President Volodymyr Zelensky dismissed Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov on July 15 as part of a broader cabinet reshuffle, and the move triggered calls for demonstrations on Thursday morning that developed into protests in Kyiv and several other Ukrainian cities on July 16. Fedorov later confirmed his departure on social media, but the change followed Zelensky's decision to remove him rather than a purely voluntary exit. The dispute quickly became politically sensitive because Fedorov had built a reputation as one of the most popular figures in the wartime government, and his removal opened a new test of Zelensky's authority as Ukraine continues to manage the military, its foreign backers, and domestic expectations under the pressure of Russia's invasion. The reshuffle matters beyond a single personnel change because the Defense Ministry sits at the center of Ukraine's war effort, procurement system, and military coordination with European and North American partners. Any abrupt turnover in Kyiv can affect command relationships, weapons planning, and the political balance inside Zelensky's administration, especially when it involves a minister associated with a major wartime portfolio. By moving against Fedorov on July 15 and facing street protests the next day, Zelensky turned a cabinet reorganization into a broader question about how wartime leadership decisions are made, how much public dissent the government can absorb, and whether changes at the top of the defense establishment will strengthen or complicate Ukraine's effort to sustain battlefield capacity and public trust at the same time. Smoke from wildfires burning across northern Ontario blanketed Toronto on July 15, pushing air pollution in Canada's largest city to the worst level recorded among major cities worldwide. Authorities urged residents to stay indoors as the smoke plume also spread south into parts of the United States. Fires far from the greater Toronto area can still produce acute health risks in a metropolitan region of several million people when wind patterns drive smoke into the city. The Toronto alert came as more than 100 wildfires were reported active in northern Ontario. Wildfire smoke is especially dangerous because fine particles can penetrate deep into the lungs, posing greater risks to older adults, children, and people with asthma or heart disease. For Toronto, a city that serves as Canada's financial and transportation hub, the deterioration in air quality also highlighted the widening reach of extreme fire conditions across the province during the summer. A Canadian National Railway freight crew escaped safely after wildfire flames surrounded its train near Armstrong, Ontario, on July 13. The incident took place as more than 160 fires burned across the region, turning a key freight corridor into a front line of Canada's wildfire emergency. Armstrong is a remote community in northwestern Ontario, and rail lines there are essential for moving goods, fuel, industrial inputs, and supplies across vast distances where alternative routes can be limited. Canadian National Railway temporarily suspended operations in the affected area after the fire encircled the train. Rail operators in northern Ontario often run through heavily forested terrain, where extreme heat, dry vegetation, and shifting winds can turn a manageable route into an evacuation hazard within minutes. The Armstrong episode carried significance beyond the video itself because interruptions on CN's network can ripple through supply chains linking Western Canada, the Prairies, Ontario, and export gateways. Sources and the full written briefing are available at sitrepbrief.com.